Public Safety Committee meeting is now come to order. Would clerk please take the roll?
Legislator Block.
Here.
Legislator Ryan.
Here.
Legislator Garland.
Here.
Legislator Knapp.
Yep.
Sorry, I don't have a complete list.
Legislator McCarron here.
Legislator McCarron.
That's
Thank
all
you
right,
very much.
you're good.
Okay.
People try to forget me all the time.
We have approval of the minutes. First item of business is approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
I think you just read the statement there.
Okay.
It's right in the plastic.
Yeah, right in the plastic. We don't vote on that
Okay.
anymore.
Are there any corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, the meetings are approved. Okay, very good. So first item of business would be the Onondaga County Office of District Attorney. We have an informational meeting, a presentation given by Joseph Coolican, First Chief Assistant.
Good morning, everybody that I haven't met in person before. I'm the Deputy District Attorney, more commonly known as the First Chief Assistant District Attorney. The DA sends his apologies, but he was in trial in Oneida all last week and is trying to unbury himself from emails and voicemails and text messages and so forth and so on. For those, again, who are unfamiliar, the DA's office carries at any given time approximately 100 employees, between 45 and 50 attorneys, a police force of approximately 27 investigators who are sworn police officers, and the remainder are staff people, CSEA staff people. Our annual budget is approximately $12,300,000 on an annual basis, but we do generate over $5 million in grants from various state agencies for the most part. What I put together is GIVE stands for Gun-Involved Violence Elimination. We are in our 12th year. The idea, and it's sponsored by the Department of Criminal Justice Services, that is DCJS, we implement evidence-based strategies to reduce gun violence. We've been doing it, again, for about 12 years. The main partners are the DA's office, the Syracuse Police Department, and the Probation Office and the Sheriff's Office. We are fortunate in Onondaga County that all of the law enforcement agencies work very well together. That doesn't happen everywhere. But we partner very closely with all three agencies. Also at the table at the monthly meetings will be parole, the state troopers, other people who have something to do with crime fighting in Onondaga County. So what I provided is the end of year stats from last year for the GIVE program. I'd like to go through the PowerPoint if anybody doesn't have any questions for what I've already talked about. Okay. Speaks for itself. These are shooting numbers by month, as well as the homicide and gun-related crime categories. CORE stands for Chronic Offender Recognition. Basically, we utilize SPD Intelligence, Central New York Crime Analysis Center, to identify those individuals who are at the most risk of either being a victim or a perpetrator of gun violence, specifically homicides. SNUG is a state agency. It's gun spelled backwards. It is basically, the idea is community violence interrupters that will operate out in the community and try to de-escalate problems before they get out of control. COPER stops. COPER was a professor who did a study who established that if police officers in urban environments get out of their car and walk around for 15 to 20 minutes a day, you see a correlation to the reduction of gun violence in the areas that they've done this. Basically, it's visibility, and they're coached not to go at the same time every day to the same place, but to randomly make a stop and, again, be seen and speak to the community. These are our end-of-year violence numbers. As you can see, shots fired varied. We are at our lowest homicide rate since we've been keeping statistics for 10 years. We've also successfully reduced the number of homicides that are perpetrated by firearms. I know I sent this over before. I didn't realize when I scanned it, it came out black and white, so I'm not sure how readable your copies are. Shots fired are down 7% from 2025, which was previously the lowest year for gun violence in Onondaga County. gun recovered firearm statistics were a little lower than we traditionally are. We've had a lot of discussion about that, why it is. Crime overall is down in the city of Syracuse and Onondaga County. And such, there's less civilian law enforcement encounters which lead to the recovery of illegal firearms. So this is the city of Syracuse numbers. We're down 51% over our 5-year average, generally across the board, except shots fired are 31% from 5-year average. This chart reflects our gun violence since 2020. As you can see, it's color-coded at the bottom. The top number is 2020, the start of COVID, where we saw an explosion of gun violence in the city. Next highest is 2021, and then 2022 went right back up almost to the same of 2020. Since then, we've managed to push it to the lowest gun violence number that I have seen since we've been keeping statistics. Last year was the lowest before that, and we're even lower this year. And we'll talk about some of the strategies and tactics that law enforcement uses. This kind of just displays the analysis that takes place when determining where to deploy assets for law enforcement, determining when and where gun violence occurs so that boots on the ground can be directed to the appropriate location at the appropriate time, at the appropriate day of the week. These are the county numbers. When I say the county, that's outside of the city of Syracuse. As you can see, we're also a bit high, but still relatively low, especially in comparison to the city. Multiple use firearms. The Crime Analysis Center tracks firearms that are used multiple times without being recovered. They do that through analyzing shell casing recovered from shots fired and shots with injuries. The understanding is that many of the illegal firearms are in the hands of people who are part of organizations, I like to use the word gang, and they are in fact passed around to commit gun violence. Again, you see our CPW firearm arrests in the city of Syracuse are down. Recovered firearms also down. This chart always confuses me, but basically it analyzes the correlation between gun arrests and gun violence. Again, we analyze the demographics so we can hopefully direct both service providers and law enforcement to the appropriate people. Somewhat troubling, the number of guns that are recovered by people 17 and under. That would be 31 in the city of Syracuse. Again, just further breakdowns of what kind of firearms are recovered. The vast majority of them are in fact pistols, and the areas POP means problem-oriented policing. So again, law enforcement takes the analysis of where the crime is happening and directs their resources appropriately to deal with it. And these are the various neighborhoods that are known for gun violence. Gun trafficking cases, I know that everybody thinks that guns come from New York. They largely don't. 95% were purchased outside of New York, and the 5% that are attributed to being purchased in New York are not necessarily purchased. We have had in the past a rash of gun store burglaries, many by juveniles, and that skews the number in New York up to 5, because we really don't see very many at all. They're generally trafficked from out of state. This past year, we did, in partnership with the Crime Analysis Center and the Syracuse Police Department, investigate and prosecute a gun trafficking ring that was bringing multiple firearms up in the state of Georgia, where they could be purchased much easier than they could be purchased up here in New York State, where we have some of the most stringent gun laws in the country. So we prosecuted 3 people in that case, all of whom ended up in state prison. We've also in the past done investigations into guns being trafficked from Ohio. Ghost guns. Ghost guns was a big deal a few years back because you literally could go online and purchase a kit that needed very little done to it to make an operable, in most cases, Glock imitation pistol. New York has in fact passed specific legislation banning the sale of these guns in New York State. But they became a very big issue there for a while, and I don't know why it just went off.
What about 3D printing? Do we have any problem with that?
We've seen a bit of it, but not a lot.
Okay.
One of the things we've seen in the past is people converting flare guns to fire shotgun rounds. Personally, I wouldn't want to have one in my hand when it went off.
Yeah, the pressure.
But, you know, they can do everything online.
Okay. So, any questions? Questions for anyone? I'd just like to mention, after the legislators, if you have questions, it is open to anyone else. We do have microphones. You have the option. You can speak right at the microphone stand, or if you're more comfortable, just stay right in your seats and somebody will walk over to you. Legislator Ryan?
So the guns recovered number, we're just slightly down, but, you know, like 2%, what do you attribute less guns being recovered to, just less?
The thought is that with less crime in the city, because crime numbers across the board are down this year, is that there's less contact between law enforcement and citizens such that would lead to the recovery of a pat down and possible recovery of a gun. It's also 2% difference. It's not a tremendous amount when you look about the sheer number of guns that we have.
One more question from Legislator McCarron, and then we'll move on.
I was just gonna commend you and your staff, Joe. I know GIVE is kind of like an evolution of the old Impact
Yes.
back in the day. And these numbers are ridiculously low compared to what we saw like in 2005 through 10. So, I mean, it's making a very impactful difference what you're doing. So,
Just trying to catch up to where we were.
Do you think that also might be because repeat offenders, some of us here, we used to read about somebody that was arrested 17, 18 times. Are we seeing with this program, repeat offenders, are they actually being arrested, convicted, or?
We are, in fact, those are the types of people that we're targeting. I mean, major people who are involved in gun violence. That's the target market.
Yes.
And I'll talk about a little bit more about the strategies of that. I mean, as far as the criminal justice system as a whole, it's a case-by-case analysis as to what a disposition of a case is. What's the evidence? What's the charge? I always say who, what, when, where, how, and why are you talking to me? When it comes to individual cases, like when I try a case, I refer to it as like it's almost like my dog. I think I know what he's going to do, but I don't really know because things skew in unusual directions.
Okay.
We're very much now focused more on, especially when it comes to the homicides, evidence-based prosecution. What you say, what does that mean? The idea is because of the lack of cooperation of many citizens that are involved in gun violence or witnesses to gun violence, or the fear in the community to be seen cooperating with law enforcement, the first thing when I started in this business, everybody went door to door, right? That's what the detectives did first thing. And door to door, did anybody see or hear anything? They still do that, but really the first thing they do is look for video because it is everywhere in our lives, whether it's commercial, whether it's cops cam, that are city-owned cameras. You've seen the blinking lights in the neighborhood, Ring cameras, everything. And then, when I talk about trying cases, I say I do things the old-fashioned way because I'm used to trying it with the cooperative citizens. But now it's almost like PowerPoints. Like they track a car all over the city on video until they can see who gets in what position in the car. It's pinging cell phones to try to get a direction or to link people to being in the same place at the same time. That's the focus. Forensics, again, very important. We are very fortunate that we have our own crime lab here in Onondaga County. They are fully accredited in every accreditation they can have, and they do a fantastic job. And by the way, are all underpaid. These are some of the strategies that we use and give. Again, I talked before, POP is problem-oriented policing, identifying the high crime areas and the micro hotspots to even take it closer. Closer, Covert curve, again, that's just getting out of cars. It's very offender-focused and deterrence-focused. When we identify somebody as a chronic offender, we don't just target them by police. reach out to them and offer services or try to connect them with community organizations. The mayor's office to reduce gun violence has been a tremendous help in that because they control a lot of the money that goes to some of these community-based organizations that can provide services and outreach. And community violence interrupters, similar to SNUG, but different organizations. The idea is to identify the people who are at risk, whether they're a juvenile or adult, and direct services to them before we have to send them to prison. I fielded a phone call just Friday from former police chief Frank Fowler. He now works for the school district, asking if we could postpone the sentencing of an offender until after June because he's going to get his high school diploma. And the idea is if he doesn't get that now, he's probably never going to get it. And of course, we agreed to that. Law enforcement is no longer just focused on arresting their way out of a problem. Prosecutors are not just focused on sending people to prison. The idea is to prevent people from having to go to prison. We have numerous diversionary courts in Onondaga County, all of which were sponsored by the district attorney. We have drug court. We have a court that's targeted to young people who are committing domestic violence. We have a veterans court. We have mental health court. There's a wide variety of services we, being prosecutors, try to engage folks with so that they don't go to prison or jail or hurt somebody or get hurt themselves. SNUG, again, trust building, CVI. I don't know how much folks caught it, but my office actually unfortunately had to prosecute some SNUG employees for dealing drugs while they were being employed by SNUG and wearing their uniforms. Mayor's Office to Reduce Gun Violence has been fantastic. So we're now trying to target people to be community violence interrupters who are not necessarily right out of prison or under probation or parole supervision. There's other civilian violence interrupters, whether it be teachers, coaches, so forth and so on, people who have influence in the community. Non-fatal shooting investigations is a big deal because the closure rate of non-fatal shootings is much lower than the closure rate for homicides. In the city of Syracuse, the SPD has an 85% closure rate, meaning closed by arrest for homicides. That is vastly superior to pretty much any other jurisdiction or the nationwide average. So a few years back, there was a tragic shooting on the 4th of July. I remember it well because it was my case. It was a beautiful 4th of July shooting investigations. The cases where nobody wants to cooperate, nobody wants to go on paper with law enforcement to try to use some of the tools the Homicide Bureau uses to cut back on non-fatal shootings. The Sheriff's Office, it's important to note that the Sheriff's Office, even though this program is centered in the city, works very closely with the Syracuse Police Department and contributes to patrols and task forces that are intended to target gun violence, as well as probation does the same thing. It's quite often there'll be a detail and there'll be a representative from the probation office in the car with the police officers when they're doing their job. I know I'm going very fast. Any questions for any of this? Hotspot policing, crime prevention through environmental design, SUPTED. The idea is you take a look at neighborhoods and try to use environmental methods to reduce gun violence. In other words, if you have an abandoned house with an overgrown lot, police know that very often that's where people stash guns and drugs. So the city will go in and clean out the overgrowth. They've had similar situations with the unhoused. There was a large unhoused community by Parkside Commons. It was an issue because Parkside Commons historically has been a hugely high crime, narcotic driven area. If you look on the map on the east side of the city, that is where Parkside Commons is, 531, the number. That's the one place on the east side of the city of Syracuse that has high gun violence. There are new landlords that have represented that they are going to make changes and in fact drive down that. And I think the state is involved because a lot of the money is coming from New York State, so they're actually holding the developers' feet to the fire to institute, again, evidence-based strategies to drive down what historically has been a very difficult problem.
With the hotspots, have they moved around?
They're constantly changing.
Traditionally?
They're constantly changing based on what the Crime Analysis Center sees as far as gun crime incidents.
And as far as the homicide rate coming down, I think I just read about it maybe last week, that was the cameras, they were helping with that, being able to solve the homicides.
When you're a city the size of Syracuse, I mean, a couple makes a big difference statistically. I think the cameras do contribute. We, I think, meaning in Onondaga County, are kind of cutting edge for evidence-based strategies compared to a lot of the areas in the country. But at the same time, if you look at gun crime across the spectrum in the United States, it is down lower now than it has been historically. I haven't heard an answer as to why. Again, these are just the hotspots, current gun violence. So each dot represents a gun crime that occurred, and the color of the dot represents how long ago it was. So this basically officer-initiated stops are things like car stops or suspects, so forth and so on. Proactive policing, whether it be trying to find somebody on a warrant detail or what have you. The slide on the right is, again, the map of Cooper spots, where police officers are parking their car, getting out, and walking amongst the community. And, you know, in a perfect world, they would be oriented with the pop areas, but they're not just the pop areas. You know, no place is immune from crime, but again, if you look at the problem-oriented policing on the east side of the city, that very dense blue dots, that is Parkside Commons, and you can see where the police are trying to initiate meeting with the community members and being seen by the community, so the community knows the police are out there.
Joe, is this data specific to the GIV unit only, or does it include like CRT?
Oh, that would be everybody. There is no CRT anymore. They did away with CRT, crime reduction team. But this is
So this
everybody.
is part, yeah,
This is
I was gonna say
patrol.
the numbers are really high.
Yes. These are just some of the neighborhoods that there's been outreach. I mentioned the unhoused population that was by Parkside Commons. So what the city did when they identified that was they went in, and if I drive by it all the time, it's, you know, they've removed all the undergrowth and all the shrubbery to make it less attractive. Hot people, gang group, top offenders, core supervision. I excluded any lists, any slides that included names, but those are all some of the ways that we target the high-risk people. When we talk about custom notifications, I mentioned earlier, we don't just police our way out of it. We notify people that they have been identified as a problem, that they are under the watch of law enforcement, and we offer up things that can help them, whether it be in education, help getting a driver's license, counseling, therapy, so forth and so on. And it's actually signed by Joe Cecil, but Lateef Johnson-Kinsey, who's the head of the Mayor's Office to Reduce Gun Violence, has been very active in going out and identifying families that need assistance and bringing help.
What's the response been, numbers-wise?
It's
Excellent
not
letters?
fantastic. It is not fantastic. More people are still rearrested than, I think, reach out for services. But we do what we can do. Again, we have these custom notifications that go to both adults and juveniles. This basically shows that we're picking the right people, because you can see the number of arrests and the types of incidents that have been arrested by people that we have put into the either juvenile or adult chronic offender list, including 3 murders in the 2nd degree. Just further breakdown. Again, these are the details. The law enforcement agencies, and it consists not just of the Syracuse Police Department, but Sheriff's Office is represented, as well as probation and parole. And they go out and, again, try to identify people who are violating their terms of their probation or parole or acting out in the community. This is just a number of hours that is devoted by investigators and patrol to give details. Procedural justice, again, this is, the concept is to try to educate the community about law enforcement, about they're just not there to pull you over, give you a ticket, or pat you down. they're, the idea is to educate the public so they know how the criminal justice system works. And we do that even from a young age. Pizza with Police and Police and Meat reading in the city of Syracuse school district. Pizza with Police is police will buy pizza and they're going to a school. And officers, uniformed officers usually can interact with the students so they can get to know their community. Police and Me is a book that was designed for elementary school kids to learn about law enforcement and something about the court system. Faith-based meetings is something that the Mayor's Office to Reduce Gun Violence started relatively recently. The idea is we, being the partners, meet with pastors at their churches to explain to them what we do for a living. They'll get the same type of kind of presentation that you folks are getting now, but also talk about alternatives or what the community thinks can be done to combat gun violence in the city of Syracuse. Last meeting, I brought with me R.J. Lenhart. He is an investigator on my staff whose purpose is to coordinate law enforcement with service providers to drive down overdoses in Onondaga County. It's all done, it's all HIPAA compliant, so forth and so on. The idea is that police respond to an OD, they've identified somebody who's got a substance abuse disorder, and then we work with the local service providers like Helio Health to direct substance abuse treatment to these folks, or at least offer it up if they're willing to accept our help. Again, this is just the numbers as far as Pizza with Police, Police and Me. Again, outreach, we're all about outreach. Mayor's Office to Reduce Gun Violence, the CBI, Safer Streets, the Department of Justice based program that the Mayor's Office to Reduce Gun Violence is doing. The idea is to, again, identify and offer therapy to people who are traumatized in the community by gun violence, to try, because those same people who are traumatized by gun violence are often the people perpetrating gun violence at some point in their life. Snug statistics, again, they've had some issues. Hopefully they're under new leadership, and they're based on the issues they had previously. The Department of Criminal Justice Services took the contract away from the current service provider and put it out for an RFP. So there'll be a new service provider starting this month to oversee SNUG. Syracuse 360. We, meaning law enforcement partners as well as probation, traveled to Omaha because they had a program called Omaha 360. And the idea was to drive down violence, and apparently it was very successful in Omaha, although again, while we try to use things that are evidence-based as being successful elsewhere, every jurisdiction is unique, and Syracuse is very unique. And if people think of the thruway cities as being the same, they're not. Buffalo is very different than Rochester. Both of them are very different than Syracuse, especially when it comes to our poverty rate. So Syracuse 360 is centered around meetings on a weekly basis with the community, and it's an open meeting. Anybody can show up. Law enforcement will be represented, but people from community agencies can be represented, and regular citizens can show up. And the idea is to discuss recent gun violence and foster communication and relationships. So we are in the process right now of standing that program up in Syracuse, modeling it on Omaha and the success they had there. It's a big ask. The city is funding it, and we haven't really gotten off the ground, but we're just about ready to do that here.
Where do you think your first meeting will be? Obviously in a hotspot targeted area, one of the churches, or what?
That has not been identified yet, as far as I know, because we still have to determine the size of the meeting space based on how interested the community is and how many partners we're going to have at the table.
Upper Missionary Baptist Church might be a good place.
Yep.
Is the DA's office the lead on that, or the mayor's office to reduce gun violence?
That's really the Mayor's Office to Reduce Gun Violence, but we're a partner at the table, as we are with anything that's related to law enforcement. Again,
as it relates to funding.
yeah, no, that's the city, I believe. Trinity, again, Yolanda Seeger runs that program. The idea is to identify identify at-risk young people and direct services to those young people before they come into the clutches of law enforcement and the district attorney's office. Again, we have action, like any meeting, we have action items for next month and so forth and so on.
Right. So just one quick question with the rescue mission. How much have you seen coming out of it? Because we know they've got that $11 million expansion, which in theory is great, but that just means that we might be compounding the problems.
Obviously, the rescue mission has been an issue. Anytime you center that population, many of whom are dual diagnosis, they suffer from both mental health as well as substance use problems, and you center them in one place, there's going to be issues because, a large part of the unhomed or unhoused population that you see on the street corners in the city are people who have mental health or substance abuse issues. And an unintended consequence of bail reform is to have them on the street, because in the past, if they were arrested for a minor offense, they would at least go to the Justice Center, be processed, evaluated for substance abuse treatment, referred to substance abuse treatment, detox in a safe environment, so forth and so on. And that simply doesn't happen anymore because of the bail reform in 2020. We've had people with 27 petty larcenies. Like, you walk in, they get an embarrassed ticket, they walk out, the next day they go into the same store and do the same thing. And it's a very difficult problem to deal with.
Which leads to another question. When you say that crime overall that's down, is that because in real world numbers, the crimes are still being committed, like, assault and everything else.
Sure.
But are the people committing those crimes being arrested? Are they being convicted? Are they being put in the system?
Everybody at the table does their very best every time there's a crime of any type, from a petty larceny to an assault first or a murder.
Right.
I think we do a very good job. We've been at this for a long time, and the GIVE program, again, has been in effect for 12 years. I chair the meetings. I've been going to these things for 12 years, literally, and I think in Onondaga County we do a very good job with crime fighting. Again, trends are trends. I read a study one time that equated high crime numbers to natural disasters. Why? Because people aren't in school, they're not at work, they're forced to be close together, and law enforcement's distracted. And that's exactly what we saw during COVID in 2020 when crime exploded. Idle hands, for want of a better description.
Well, because GIVE is in their 12th year, sounds like you have your funding, everything that you need.
Everything's all set. We are, based on the success of GIVE, DCJS is now standing up a program called STRIVE. The idea is statewide targeted reduction in intimate partner violence. Modeled on the same evidence-based techniques to drive down the most dangerous of domestic violence perpetrators. Domestic violence is a very difficult problem to deal with because sometimes people use police as a quick response force, like the military, and as soon as the person's out of the house, they show up in my office and want to drop the order of protection or want to drop charges, and it becomes a very dangerous cycle for people. So we are, again, working with agency, Geiger Institute, which specializes in domestic violence prevention, to formulate the strategy to identify the people most at risk to commit domestic violence, to kill or be killed by a intimate partner, to direct services much the same way we do with GIVE.
All right, so before I open up for questions, on the county level with us as a committee, what can we do to help advocate for you, support you, other than increasing your salaries?
Music to my ears. I think we're in a good spot right now. You will see me at various times throughout the year when I go in front of the ledge to talk about budget or talk about accepting grant money. And I've distributed my card, so I'm always available. My cell is 315-727-9212, 24/7.
We appreciate it.
Staffing numbers are still good, right? I know that a big problem with that,
Yes.
but we're back
We're
up.
almost running out of space for lawyers in that office.
That's a good problem.
It's a very good
Compared to where we
problem
were a
compared
year
to
or
a
two
bunch
ago.
of empty
Right.
offices after COVID.
Right. Well, congrats.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Yes.
Oh, we have one from Rich Lehman.
Thank you, Charles. Bill, thanks for coming in.
Of course.
Good overview. Just kind of on the heels of what Rich asked, this legislature, particularly over the past 2 years, has kind of stepped up to help solve some
Absolutely.
Other issues that were raised along the way were expenses, transportation to and from, obligations to local justice courts, things of that nature. Has there been any progress in those areas, or has the staffing issue sort of helped with it? Because we've raised salaries. Has that kind of helped satisfaction with some of those other things that have historically been a
It
challenge?
is. There's always a wrestling match because we have justice courts here. We don't have like a district court. So there's generally 2 judges in every town in most of the villages, which handle things like preliminary examinations for felony or traffic or misdemeanor trials, not that there are very many of them. During COVID, we made much of it virtual. We now handle traffic mostly online now. But we do appear anything that requires an attorney to be there, whether it's a motion argument, whether it's a trial, so forth and so on. But we're no longer having DA nights, which is somewhat controversial. The judges want to see a lawyer there. But as I pointed out, we're the only ones who don't get paid to go out there. The judges getting paid, court staff's getting paid, sheriff's custody's being paid, defense attorney's getting paid a lot of money. But my people work a 7 or 8 hour day in their typical day, and then they'd have to go out and sit in a justice court, depending on how busy it is, for hours.
So management policy is sort of helping you.
Over
Yes,
that hump.
yes.
Okay.
I've met with Judge
Thank you.
Garland, the chief administrative judge, because, again, she'd heard a lot of complaints from some of the justice court judges that they don't have an ADA there.
Right.
But after I explained our systems and what the problem is, everybody's completely on board with us continuing to do what we're doing.
Great to hear. Thank you.
Yep.
For the STRIVE program, are we implementing that, or where is that?
We're implementing it. We've been working since last January, February, which is when the first information came out. But we're standing a program up from scratch, and it requires training. The Institute, Geiger Institute, that is contracted with New York State, not even with Onondaga County or the Syracuse Police Department, to provide the training to the officers about how to conduct a questionnaire when they come in contact with a survivor witness of domestic violence, to help identify who those high-risk people are. The Geiger Institute apparently ran out of money that they got from New York State in 2025, so they're in the process of waiting for the next quarter to start kicking off the training. And we're forbidden for actually implementing it until the people are appropriately trained. That said, the agencies, meaning the sheriff's office, the DA's office, are identifying those high-risk people and trying to direct increased services to those people. For instance, we had a person that was identified as a chronic domestic abuser whose significant other refused to testify over and over again. In the past, that's a case that may have just disappeared because I want to drop charges. But the ADA knew that the person was in fact identified as a chronic high-risk domestic abuser, took a deeper dive into it and found body-worn camera of the victim and defendant being in the same car in violation of an order of protection. We actually prosecuted the case without the victim's cooperation. In fact, she did show up and testify that she didn't want anything to happen. But an order of protection is an order by a judge. That's who's being violated, the judge who issued the order. So we were successful in prosecuting that individual.
Well, thank you, Joe.
And I think we had a personnel resolution, adding personnel.
We did.
raise, we-
Yep,
and
all
the
funded by
last-
STRIVE. Again,
Yep.
we bring in over $5 million a year in grants, which is a big chunk of our budget, when our budget's 12.3, I believe, million.
Well, we look forward to the implementation of the program, supporting it.
Outstanding.
Thank you.
I was just gonna use my teacher's voice. Thank you for all the work that you do in the DA's office. I just had a question. I know we spoke a lot about violent crimes, and I know you spoke about different trends dealing with criminals. At one point, we had a lot of crimes dealing with auto theft.
The Kia boys.
Okay.
I don't know if we ran out of Kias and Hyundais that had been stolen or what, but that's largely cool now.
It is.
Yes, because I think most of the vehicles of that vintage that was susceptible to being hotwired, essentially, for a better term, now are either off the road or, in fact, have a bar or whatever, other security features they have. It became so notorious, it was outrageous.
I was
And
at a
almost all youth driven, so there's very little repercussions. Most of them I couldn't even touch because of their age. They would go to family court, which is governed by the Family Court Act. which has a whole different purpose than, penal law.
And I'm glad New York State did implement a law saying that they can't even sell the template for the 3D printers to make those ghost guns. But how about the gun buyback program?
Listen, statistically, I know people love it because it looks good. Statistically, it doesn't make a dent in the violence.
Okay.
What you largely get are, grandpa's gun in the attic. It's been laying there for 10 years and, mom wants it out of the house type of deal. We have gotten some gun crime on guns. What happens is, people who don't know the program, people are offered amnesty for the moment that they turn it in. Not amnesty for any gun crime they might have committed with it. And then the guns are sent off to the state police crime lab to be test fired and have the shell casing entered into the database, linking them to recover crime guns. So there's been a couple, but it really doesn't make a big dent in it. In fact, I thought to myself, if I wasn't me, I'd show up and sell pistols because you can make more money selling it to the state than you paid for it.
Believe me, my grandfather was in the war. He had a lot of guns sitting there. I wish he could have sold it back. The last thing, first of all, thank you for all the work that you do with the organizations within the community. Those are great organizations that you're working with. I did have a question dealing with resources. A lot of constituents, they reach out, and these are resources due to murders of, high crime victims. Are there any resources that the DA office provides to help support those families?
Yeah, Victim Services, we have a grant from New York State Office of Victim Services. We have a full-time employee whose sole purpose is to interface with victims of gun violence or their survivors in the case of a homicide. The state has a program that the state will pay for funeral expenses for a homicide victim. Our coordinator will direct people to services, to therapists, so forth and so on. We make sure that the victim survivor or their family is aware of upcoming parole hearings and so forth and so on, so that their voice can be heard when the case goes in front of the parole board.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wonderful program. Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate
My
you
pleasure.
coming.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, everybody.
We'll be moving on, everyone, to item number 2, the Sheriff's Department. We have a resolution authorizing certain deputy sheriffs of the Onondaga County Sheriff's Department to participate in the optional 20-year retirement plan provided for under Section 552, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll be joined by Lynn. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Legislator Garland. For the new faces at the table, I'm Chief Maureen Murphy. I'm the Chief Deputy of Administration for the Sheriff, who sends his apologies. He's in Albany at the New York State Sheriff's Association training for the week, so he couldn't attend this meeting today. So on his behalf, I would like to explain what this resolution is about.
Yes, please.
So when the sheriff's office when the sheriff took office, one of the things that I was tasked with was reviewing the personnel files, making sure everything was in order. And we discovered several folks that were not properly slotted in the right retirement plan for various reasons, mostly clerical errors. And through no fault of the employees, they weren't registered with the proper plan within New York State Retirement. So these 6 members are police members that should have been in the 20-year 552 plan within New York State Retirement. They have retirement, but they're not in the proper plan, so they won't be able to retire without this legislation. Unfortunately, many of the errors we found were able to just be corrected with new forms. We worked very diligently with the personnel office, with the county, and working together, we were able to resolve 90% of all of the issues. These 6 the issue had been too long, it had timed out for them to be just moved into the proper plan. It was against the state's timing. So they had timed out. So we sought resolution at the state level to be able to move them into the proper plan. They voted on it and accepted it, so now we're asking that this body also accept so these members can be entered into the proper 552 retirement plan that they should be in.
Okay, we'll open this up for discussion. Do you have anyone that would like to move this motion?
I'll make a motion on this.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, the motion has been.
Unfortunately, this is the first time we've entertained this.
Yes.
So hopefully the last.
I can guarantee it will be the last.
All right, the motion, yes,
Wave my hand.
okay.
Appreciate that you have a motion, just a point of clarification, kind of on the heels of what Ann said.
We've already addressed this in the past, and it's something that we need to continue to do to keep these 6 individuals on the right track. Is that correct?
That's absolutely.
It's not new people.
No.
It's just a continuation of something that's already been solved. This is how we solve it.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the motion has been seconded. It's open for discussion. Anybody?
So those are the 2 main tracks. Appointing is legislator-led, predominantly chair-led, though there are some exceptions. And then confirmations are county executive-led, where it descends and requires a vote of the legislature. This has been handled a number of ways over the history of the legislature. The way we're going to be handling it this year is that we are looking for each of the standing committees to play a more primary role in who ought to be assigned to these committees. And so each of the different committees, boards, and commissions have been matched with a standing committee of the legislature, in this case, public safety. And we are looking for you as a committee to put forward amongst yourselves, most likely who the legislators are when it's a legislator, and or collecting resumes and the like for other outside community members when that is applicable for them to be appointed to these boards. There's a number of them that are currently sitting vacant, and so we'd like to address this as quickly as possible. Our staff have been doing a lot of research. We hope to be ready for your February committee meeting to have a fully updated list of each of the folks sitting on these, what their terms are, to be able to push forward some different appointments to be able to get these occupied. So for the Public Safety Committee, there are 4 outside boards and commissions that are connected to this standing committee. The first is the Onondaga County Justice Center Oversight Committee. There are 6 that are recommended by the chair of the county legislature. So again, in this case, looking for you all to determine. They are 2 that have prior law enforcement experience, which I know there's 1 person at least sitting at this table that is true of. At least 2 who have experience in civil rights and or civil liberties issues, and at least 1 recommended by the minority leader of the county legislature. There are also some that are appointed or put forward by the county executive, which we would vote on, and the mayor of Syracuse. There are, according to our records, quite a few vacancies on this particular committee, so this is a top priority for our February meeting. As best as we can see, there are 4 of our legislator positions. There's only 2 that are filled and 4 that are currently open. And so if you have anyone that you would like to put forward for this particular committee, John DeSantis from our staff is collecting all of the resumes for all of these things, and we'll be putting them together so that the committee can review those resumes and determine who they believe would be the best suited to fill these spots. This is an extremely important committee for a whole lot of reasons. I think we all know that, so I encourage you to send those our way. Second, County Jury Board is one legislator, and Legislator McCarron has been sitting on that. Would you like to continue in that?
If the opportunity presented itself, absolutely. Thank you.
Fantastic. And Criminal Justice Advisory Board has been being sat on by Legislator Garland. Are you planning to continue in that role?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. And last but not least is one that's appointed by the county executive, but will just be connected to this committee for updates and or any kind of necessary approvals, the Fire Advisory Board. So those are the four that are going to be connected to this committee, not only for the appointments and confirmations, but also for updates. So we're going to be looking in the agendas across this year that we would get from Legislator McCarron, an update from the County Jury Board and how things are going and just what's going on, so that we have a shared kind of burden across the different committees to make sure that we're playing our due diligence and our role and just knowing what's going on in terms of these outside boards and commissions. Any questions? Great.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sure, okay. Any other business to come before the committee? All right, if not, this meeting is adjourned. Yes, I'd like
I'll give a motion to
Second.
adjourn.
Second?